I'm going to show you in this video how to turn this $15 tabletop round from Lowe's into this wall art Captain America shield. DIYers, assemble. All of the materials that you will need for this project are listed in the video description below. Just know that you can buy these items from Amazon or from your local hardware store. You just want to make sure that you're shopping around and make sure that you're getting the best deal. All that to say as well, there are a couple creative decisions I made with my shield. The first one, and I'll cover this in detail in my video, is that I decided to actually cut circular sections into my shield to give it more detail. I did this because a lot of the Captain America shields that I saw did have some sort of detail here, but I also did that to help contain the stain that I used for this shield. Now the reason why I chose stain over paint is, as we all know, paint only covers up the wood grain, but stain actually embeds in it. And I wanted to use a special method I've used in the past on furring strip American flags to really enhance that wood grain look. And I'll cover that in detail in the video as well, but you essentially burn the wood grain with a torch. So by far the most difficult part of this project for me, and we're talking like Thanos level difficulty here, this is the worst boss to take down, was trying to cut the circles into the shield for that definition. Now, I thought of a lot of different ways to do this, but this is the process that I finally settled on. The first step of that process was I sat down and I looked over some scale drawings of the shield. I'm working with a 24-inch table round, so I had to make sure that the circles made sense and were to scale inside that table round. From several of the scale drawings that I saw, I just decided to settle on a 2.5-inch thickness for each of the rings, leading up to that blue section in the middle that would take up the extra space that was left. So when I sat down and I crunched the numbers, I have my numbers jotted down here. Dark art of math, but this is a Marvel video, so we're not using that here. I ended up calculating that the first circle I would needed to be 19 inches in diameter, the second circle needed to be 14 inches in diameter, and the third circle needed to be 9 inches in diameter. As I thought this through a little bit more, I realized that I was going to need to use a tool to be able to cut these circles out. And the tool that I decided to use was my trusty Dremel. And if you notice on this Dremel, with this guard, I needed to actually get from the center of this bit out to the edge of the guard accounted for in the diameters of my circles as well. So a quick measurement told me that this was 1 1/8 dimension that I needed here. And I needed to double that for both sides of the circle. So that looks like 2 1/4 inches that I also needed to take into account into the diameter of my circles. So my final diameters that I used to be able to cut my circles into my tabletop round were 16 3/4, 11 3/4, and 6 3/4. Probably the most useful part to me, and I hope this is useful to you. Instead of doing this as a one-off type project, I wanted to make some templates so that I could do future shields in the future. I'm not looking to sell these at all. Marvel, please do not come for me. I know that Disney owns you. I know you're protective of your copyrights. I don't want that. I don't want to fight. No. Anyways, all that to say, I used some foam board here, $3 from Target. It took 2 pieces of foam board, but I did try the trusty string on a nail method where you mark the center of the circle, you put that nail at the center, you then measure a piece of string out to be as long as you need, and you would tie a marker or some sort of pin to the end, draw that circle while holding that string tight, and then cut that out with a box cutter or scissors or something like that. I was terrible at this. I could not make that work. I had a very difficult time trying to hold everything and keep that string tight. So I actually found a video, and I'll link it in the description as well. This is not an Ethan Parker genius idea, but a piece of wood with some clamps with a screw on the end and then some marks to show where you need to position your pencil in order to draw that line worked like a charm. It was amazing, and I would definitely recommend this method to anyone. But what you do, this is the smallest circle, or one of the small circles. You put your mark in the center, you put your nail on that, and you just use this to scribe around. And what this allowed me to do was avoid my problem of keeping the string tight, because this is a hard surface. So I was able to go through and cut out my circles using that. Once again, use this to mark where the edge of the circle would be, and then I used a box cutter and went around very slowly and methodically in order to cut this out. I don't have Howard Stark levels of money, I don't have Tony Stark levels of money. I've got to work with what I've got, and that looks like a box cutter. Alright, so after cutting out the circles, I took my table round and using a tape measure, I marked the center of this circle. So that's 12 inches down, 12 inches over, and that's actually right there, if you can see that. By adding in this detail around the star, I was able to help hide that little indentation, but I made a very small hole here so that I could actually pin my tabletop rounds into, or my foam rounds, tabletop rounds. I actually used a small nail and positioned those like so, pinned it down, and you'll see in this video, I put a piece of wood across the top and clamped it down in order to be able to use my Dremel to cut out the grooves. And overall, I'm very happy with how that turned out. I would recommend that to you as a method to use it as well. Cut pretty straight lines for trying to cut a circle out of wood. So moving on to the star, which could be the most important part of the whole shield. What I ended up doing here, I found a star pattern, and I'll put a link to that as well. I did not come up with this on my own, but I'll put a link so you can find that star. It's a scalable star so that you can actually make it fit whatever dimension you're using for the diameter of the shield. If I can learn to talk, I'll be doing great. But I cut this star out of paper with my amazing scissors skills. Oh, go me. But anyways, once again, putting a hole in the middle, and that let me line that up with the center of the shield. I then traced around the edge using a straight edge to make sure that I had straight lines. And once I had that done, I was able to take a piece of wood, lay that across several of the lines, so 2 lines at a time, and then use the Dremel to cut that out. Just once again, cutting through the marks that I made, and that made a really nice star pattern for my center. To make those really thin lines on the inner of the star, the inner part of the star, once again, struggling to talk, but you guys know what I mean. I'm just so excited about the shield. All I did was take a straight edge and a box cutter and just slightly score the interior so that you have that nice detailed look inside the star itself. So now we get to move on to the staining portion of the flag, which is probably one of the most stressful processes. This is not a, I can do this all day type moment. I did use Prestain, once again using Minwax stains like I've used on past projects. I used water-based stain. I used the water-based Prestain from Minwax as a base, following the instructions on that can. I also used 3 colors of stain, and I'm going to pass those on to you. I used the Crimson water-based stain. They also have a new type of stain out there, and this is the type that I use that have a higher solid concentration in order to give you more vibrant colors. So I did go out and get that stain, but the colors I used were Crimson. I used a gray premixed stain from Lowe's, and I used Denim Blue. These are all the colors that, with the exception of the gray, that Minwax itself will recommend to you if you're trying to do a flag project. So I just had those. I did have to use the Lowe's mixing services in order to create the Crimson and Denim Blue colors, because those aren't pre-packaged colors. All you do is get some clear tint base, take it up to the counter, and ask them for those colors, and they're able to mix that for you really quickly. So I was able to work in small sections of the flag, get this stain applied. I was doing this very small. I was following the instructions on the can, so that meant that I was doing 2 coats, waiting around an hour in between both coats. But you put the stain on, you let it dry for the recommended amount of time on the can, and then you wipe off that extra stain, and then you come back an hour later to put more stain on over it. I did do 2 coats of stain on the red and blue surfaces. I only did 1 coat of stain on my gray surfaces because I felt like, with the help of my wife, that might make the shell too dark. So I did do that. I decided to use gray over white, and if you did want to use white, you could just use the pure white that Minwax recommends for their flag projects. I did decide to use gray because that's more of the cinematic shield look, but also if I did get any sort of stain bleed, I realized that the gray would hide that a little bit more. I am planning on going back and making another flag for someone else that will use the white stain, but just know you have some options. If you're looking for that classic look, pure white will get it for you, that pure white stain. But if you're looking for more of the cinematic look, that gray will do that for you as well. So after I got all those coats of stain on there, I went back in and this is the only part that's not a water-based stain. I used a dark walnut oil-based stain that I had left over from Minwax. to go around the interior circles that I cut out with the Dremel. I did that, and I chose to use that oil-based stain because it's what I had on hand that was a darker stain. I talked with my assistant, my wife. I talked with her a lot about if I should just go back through those grooves with the color of the ring that was closest to it. And what we decided on was to give it that added definition. I did need to use a dark stain. I didn't want to go, with a full-on black because these areas are so tight you can't wipe out that extra stain. So what you put in there is what it's going to dry as and what you're going to get. So we decided to go ahead and go back in with a stain we already had and a stain that we knew would not dry super, super, super dark, but would still give it some detail and showcase the grain inside of those circles. So now we're reaching probably my favorite part of the whole project. You don't have to be Captain America fighting in World War II against soldiers with flamethrowers to get a little bit of fire damage on your shield. You only have to use the Japanese method of shushugiban, and I'm probably not saying that right, but all that to say is it's the Japanese art of burning wood. Typically with that traditional method, you're absolutely charring the wood, but here you're only using it slightly to help enhance that grain. So yes, you stain the wood first, then you're going to use a torch and actually go back over that stained wood to help draw out the grain, and it actually will change the color and enhance the color a little bit. Now what you're going to notice is I worked on the back of the shield first to make sure that I had my torching methods down because I'm a little bit rusty. But all that to say, you just want to test it out on a sample piece of wood first. Then you want to make sure that you're holding your blowtorch a consistent distance from your surface that you're torching. 12 inches is probably good, but once again, it's one of those things where you're just going to find out as you're going along if it's too close or too far in. Just remember that it's better to be farther out and have to go over it multiple times than absolutely singe your wood from the start, because you can't go back from that. Once you have that, you're not going to sand down that wood and redo it. So just take it slow, get it right the first time, and just proceed like that. But just go back and forth over the wood with the direction of the grain, and you're going to really see those grains begin to pop in the wood and add a nice color to it. I did go over a couple spots with a little bit more time, a little bit more focus, because I wanted to actually have the shield be battle damaged. And that's actually one of the great things about doing the shield this way with stain instead of paint, is that you can use this wood burning method to give your shield, in my opinion, some more authentic look. It's not going to look like that Marvel Legends shield straight out of the box for $100. This is going to have some character to it, and you can make up your own stories about how it got that character. So after I burned the shield, I wanted to go ahead and protect that. So I grabbed a can of clear semi-gloss Helmsman and sprayed that over the top of the shield. The main reason why I'm using an aerosol spray instead of brushing it on is because I don't want my colors to bleed. So by using this spray canister and doing it in small layers, I'll be able to prevent that bleed from happening over the shield. Here I am just spraying on the Helmsman, making sure that I'm doing nice thin layers and making sure that they overlap. I did 3 layers, and I'm also making sure that the shield is flat so that the extra polyurethane doesn't run down the face of the shield. You're probably wondering, how do you hang a Captain America shield on your wall? Well, in my case, I'm going to be using my trusty command strips. I've had good luck with them. Once again, not sponsored, but I have had good luck with command strips in the past. I'm going to put a couple extra on it to be safe. The shield probably weighs close to 10 pounds, so it's substantial, but I'm sure that these will hold it no problem. You're going to see this forever on my left. Lame Captain America joke, but I'm going to hang it right back there on the wall. So you'll be able to see that in future videos if you decide to subscribe, like, and comment, and stay tuned for future DIY projects and things that are going on. So now you'll know the story of how I made my Captain America shield and why it's hanging there on the wall.